Right. Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock on March 15th, 2022. I'll call this meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission to order. Let's start with introductions of the commissioners. I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Kelly Wemple. I'm an architect and I was nominated by the American Institute of Architects. Next, we have George.
Hi, George Dennis, and I have the honor and privilege of curating a historic home. And I was nominated by History Colorado.
Thanks, Brad.
Hi, my name is Brad Gassman. I'm an architect and I was nominated by History Colorado.
Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Johnson. I'm a historic preservation project manager and I was nominated by the community at large.
Gary.
Hello, I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica Warzel. I'm an architectural historian and preservation consultant, and I was nominated by the community at large.
And Anne.
Hi, I'm Ann Wattenberg. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
Thanks. And Jen, can you introduce yourself as well?
Yep, I'm Jen Capetto. I'm Landmark Preservation staff.
Great. All right, so the first thing on our agenda today is that we have a meeting record for review. So that's the March 1st meeting record. Did anyone have any comments there? And if not, would someone like to make a motion?
I can make the motion.
Thanks, Brad.
I move to approve the meeting record for March 1st, 2022.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion, Kelly.
Thank you, Julie. All right, then I will call for the vote. George.
Aye.
Brad.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Erica.
Hi.
Anne.
Hi.
And Kelly abstain because I wasn't at that meeting. So it looks like we've got 6 votes for approval, 1 abstention. That was myself, Kelly. And so the motion passes and the meeting record is approved. All right. Next up, we have our public comment period. So for those of you joining us today, we reserve some time at the beginning of every Landmark Preservation Commission meeting for public comments. This is not for any project that's up for a hearing or design review today, because we will have separate comment periods for those agenda items. But if you have any comments on general preservation matters, then go ahead and raise your hand at this time. If you're joining us by phone, you can dial *9 and that will raise your hand.
I don't see any hands raised at the moment.
All right.
And for the record, we don't have anyone by phone right now. I'll let you know
Okay.
if that changes.
Thanks, Jen. All right, if we don't have any public comments, we'll keep moving forward. We do have 3 projects on the consent agenda today. Do any commissioners have any concerns about these projects? Anything you want to pull off consent? And if not, who would like to make the motion?
I can make the motion.
Thanks, Anne.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda, which consists of the following. Application number 2022-COA-094 at 2347 Stout Street. Application number 2022-COA-095 at 2150 Lafayette Street. And application number 2022-COA-101 at 150 West Archer Place.
Thank you, Anne. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Gary. All right, I will call for the vote. George?
Aye.
Brad?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Erica?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
Kelly? Aye. All right, so we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So if you're joining us today for one of the consent agenda projects, your project has been approved. So feel free to hop off the line or stay on if you'd like to see the rest of the agenda items today. So next up, we do have two public hearings. Well, we have one public hearing today, another one that we'll set. But that is, can we get the process for public hearings up? Oh, this is the public comments. We'll go ahead and stay on this one then. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the project that's up for a public hearing today. And then we're going to go ahead and hear from staff, Landmark staff, about their assessment of the application. Then we'll hear from the applicant. The applicant will have up to 10 minutes to present this designation application. And when we're done with the applicant's presentation, we will open it up for public comments. So if you're joining us to provide a public comment on this hearing today, these are the instructions up on the screen for doing so. When we call for public comments, you can go ahead and use the hand raise button on Zoom. So it should be on the lower part of your screen. And when you provide a public comment, we'll need you to start with your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 3 minutes per person. So with that, I will go ahead and, our public hearing is for 2021L-010 at 3435 Albion Street. And I will go ahead and open the public hearing. So Kara. Go ahead.
I apologize, my computer is a tad slow on wanting to forward these slides. So this is for the designation application, as Kelly said, at 3435 Albion Street. And just want to provide you a little context. It's on the corner of Albion Street and East 35th Avenue, right here across from the golf course and fairly close to Colorado Boulevard. It is in Council District 8 in the Northeast Park Hill neighborhood. We wanted to let you guys know that this is currently zoned PUD for a PUD that was strictly for a restaurant business, but it is currently being rezoned to EMX2X, and it is has gone to Denver Planning Board, which they recommended approval, and it is currently at City Council for their review. And this would allow for additional uses beyond the PUD, which was very restrictive to the restaurant use. The owner and applicant is Steve Davis, technically 3435 Albion LLC. This particular property came into us last year about this time for a demolition application. We, as Landmark staff, found that it had the potential to be a Denver landmark. We publicly posted it for notice. Through that process, there was a facilitated stakeholder meeting or series of meetings with the community, with the current property owner at that time. And Historic Denver participated in that, and they were able to help facilitate finding a preservation-minded buyer who would purchase the property. And so Steve Davis purchased the property and is looking to reuse part of the property and retain and designate the southern half of the structure. So here are two maps to show you. The one on the left is for illustrative purposes, and then the one on the right is what is being designated. So on the left, you can see that there used to be a addition to the property that has been removed. It was a 1990s addition that housed a restaurant, if anyone's familiar with the restaurant that used to be there. That has been removed, and on the right, you now see the existing footprint and the proposed boundary, which is the southern portion of the parcel. On the southern portion would be designated, and then on the northern portion, Steve is looking to redevelop to add a little more density to the site. So the left is for illustrative purposes. Unfortunately, the most recent aerial we have has the addition on that side. So it looks like it's running through the building, but it is actually not. But we wanted to make sure that you guys had some clarity on that. There's going to be some photos in here that's there was a photo that showed the original or the addition that has been removed within the last couple of months. In case anyone is on the line and needs some background information, Denver Landmark was established in 1967 by an act of City Council for the purposes of designating, preserving, and protecting historic resources. Since that time, we have designated 354 individual landmarks. We have 58 historic districts, which totals about 7,200 landmark buildings out of the approximately 160,000 buildings within the city. Our districts are primarily residential in nature. We have about 5 commercial or downtown districts, and we have 2 historic cultural districts. It sounds a lot when we say 58 historic districts, but it represents about 4.5% of the city, or about 1 in 25 structures that are designated. When a property is designated, it's designated as is. There are no requirements for the property owner to restore it or to improve the property. There are a set of design guidelines that would be followed when a property is designated, which is the purpose to preserve the historic character of the property and to provide clear and predictable regulations for owners, applicants, and staff, as well as the Landmark Preservation Commission. And the demolition of a building that is designated is highly discouraged and requires review by the Landmark Preservation Commission. This is just a slide that talks about what Landmark Preservation would review when a property is designated. And it breaks down to, we basically review anything on the exterior that requires a building or zoning permit, which is listed here on the left. And on the right highlights the things we do not review, which is any interior alterations, paint color, repairs and maintenance, plants and trees, and work below grade, as well as any work that is has been submitted for a permit prior to designation. So I know Steve is working on doing some work on the property. Anything that would be submitted for permitting would not be reviewed by us and we wouldn't review anything until the property is designated. Landmark designation is a community-driven process. And in this case, it is being submitted by the owner of the property. And in order for a property to be designated per the landmark ordinance, the structure must meet the following criteria. It needs to maintain its integrity. It needs to be 30 years of age or older, or have exceptional importance. The structure must meet at least 3 out of 10 criteria, and you as the Landmark Preservation Commission must consider the structure's historic context when reviewing the designation application. This particular designation meets 3 out of the 10 criteria, A, C, and G, and we are going to go through all of those. So it is significant under A for a direct association with a significant historic event or with the historical development of the city, state, or nation. This particular property is significant for its development of the area. So it's been known and named as the Robinson House, which is named after its first owner, J. Robinson. And it represents a period of expansion and growth in Denver in which houses were being built on speculation, which was a new concept for Denver in the late 19th century. Due to economic and population growth in the 1870s and 1880s, the city experienced a significant building boom with 527 subdivisions platted in the 1880s alone. In 1889, the Robinson House was part of an expansion in the building boom, and it was the first house built in the area by the developer John Cook Jr. As you can see on the left, this is a based map from 1905, which postdates this a bit. But it shows that it's the North Division of the Capitol Hill subdivision by John Cook Jr. In 1889, he built the Robinson House on speculation in an attempt to lure investors to develop other properties, to purchase and develop other properties. However, the investors did not follow, and few other lots were sold and houses were constructed. And then a few years later, with the Panic of 1893 and the subsequent economic depression that followed, the building boom just abruptly ended. So as a result, Cook's plans for the subdivision were not realized. And so this house represents both Denver's building boom in the 1880s and then the bust in the early 1890s. It is also associated with the area of North Park Hill when it was really on the edge of Denver, and it was straddling an urban and rural setting. This is an aerial from 1933, which is a little bit later than kind of what I'm talking about, but does really illustrate that it is sort of, kind of really, I don't want to say out in the middle of nowhere, but really, really on the edge of Denver. The area surrounding it was fairly rural in nature. There was the Clayton Home for Orphaned Boys, which was to the west of Colorado Boulevard. The city dairy was to the north, where there currently is the golf course. And then to the east and south were brickworks factories. And so after the panic of 1893, the Robinson House was only, one of a handful of other homes that were scattered amongst the dairies and the brick farms. And at that time in 1913, long-term owners of the family, the Rowe family, used the land surrounding the house for farming with outbuildings such as farms and chicken coops supporting that use. These are a couple of images I found associated with a National Register nomination for this when it is listed on the National Register. And they had these photos of dating from circa 1913 and 1916 of the farm or of the house in the area that was used as farmland. So amenities and services that were provided to other parts of the city were really absent through its first few decades. Electricity wasn't installed until 1921. And while there were electric streetcars in other parts of Denver, here were used by horse-powered streetcars in this particular area. So other houses of this earlier period have primarily been demolished. But the Robinson House remained on its corner lot as the neighborhood grew, and there were Tudor revivals and minimal traditionals that typically grew up around it during its period of significance. And so it's significant for the development of the city. It is also significant under criterion C for embodying the distinctive visible characteristics of an architectural style or type. And this is for the distinctive characteristics of the Queen Anne style. It can be seen in the steeply pitched roof with a cross gable, the dominant front-facing gable, the asymmetrical appearance. And then, a typical part of the Queen Anne style is trying to avoid the appearance of sort of a smooth wall, which can be seen with the dogtooth brickwork, the stone and brick belt courses, and then a lot of decorative wood elements with the verge board and the spindles, and the characteristic two-story porch. You can also see that there are upper panes of windows that are surrounding the smaller pane. They're on the upper panes of the windows. There are smaller window panes that are surrounding it that are characteristic of the Queen Anne style. And so this is significant for its architectural style. And then finally, it's significant under criterion G for promoting an understanding and appreciation of the urban environment by means of distinctive physical characteristics or rarity. In this particular house, it's physical characteristics and rarity. First, its distinctive physical characteristics. So as I noted earlier, its surrounding neighborhood is Tudor revivals that came in the 20s and 30s and minimal traditionals in the 40s and 50s. And that was primarily what was surrounding the neighborhood until much more recently when we're seeing larger scale development. And the stylistic elements of all three are typically more minimal. And so the elaborate Queen Anne house really stands out with its extensive detailing and its distinctive physical characteristics. It is also significant for its rarity. In the North Park Hill area, as well as the greater Park Hill neighborhoods, there are few houses of the same vintage. There is the McCoy House, which is constructed in 1889. It's a small Victorian within a couple of blocks of the building, but is much smaller, and this is much more elaborate in nature. And then just in the greater Park Hill neighborhood, there's a handful of homes that were constructed before the 20th century. But this is really a rare survivor of one of the oldest homes in the Cook subdivision, and is significant for its rarity. So landmark staff found that it met all 3 criteria. We also found that the property retains integrity. There are multiple rear additions at the building, which can kind of be seen here on the lower end in the back there. However, since they are all still at the rear of the building, they do not detract from the Queen Anne style or the detailing. When you are on the public right of way from the front of this house, from on the front of the street, you really see, and it still really reads as a Queen Anne house. It maintains all of its aspects of integrity. It's in the original location. The design, materials, and workmanship are evident, and the feeling, setting, and association is retained. The setting has been slightly changed with the large-scale new construction around it, but it's still in an urban neighborhood. And since the period of significance goes till 1953, when you were seeing this development in the 20s and 30s with the Tudors, and then in the 40s and 50s and post-war era with minimal traditionals, it's still in sort of a urban neighborhood and still retains the setting. And then the ordinance requires that as the Landmark Preservation Commission, you consider the historic context of the particular property. And as is appropriate for a property proposed for designation, the historic context is strongly interrelated with both the areas of significance and the periods of significance. It's associated with the initial platting of the North Division of Capitol Hill. It was built on speculation in 1889, and with the collapse in 1893, it remained one of the few Queen Anne's in the area. There's still a little bit of the rural setting from the first several decades, as you can see sort of the open space to the north of the property that is now a golf course rather than a dairy. And the period of significance extends through the ownership of the Rowe family, who owned it until 1953. So staff felt that the historic context supported the areas of significance and the criteria. And overall, we found that it meets the designation requirements. It's over 30 years of age. It meets at least 3 of the criteria. It retains integrity, and we found that it relates to its historic context. And so we would recommend approval. And there is a motion that is both here on the screen and is in your staff report. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you, Kara. Are there any questions for staff? No. All right. Then let's see if the applicant is available to join us. Have they been promoted?
Emily's moving them over.
Great.
I did also want to note that my colleague, Jason Morrison, who is working on the rezoning, is also here in case you guys have any questions on that process. I very vaguely touched on it, but he can speak to much greater detail on that. And so he's here in case you guys have questions.
Awesome. That's great. Are there any questions for Jason right now? No? Okay.
Emily, any luck? Doesn't look like they've moved over.
I'm almost there. I apologize. I don't know what's taking it so long.
No worries. It takes time. We get it.
Okay. I think that they should be over.
They're not yet.
Weird.
Yeah.
Did that work?
Steve's not over yet. So Steve, you might have to click accept on your screen. It might pop up and say that Emily is trying to move you over to panelist. That is what's supposed to happen. And if it's not working, I'm just going to click allow to talk for both.
It looks like he just moved over. So when you're ready, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and begin. Yeah, that worked. So please start with your name and address for the record, and you have up to 10 minutes.
Okay, well, thank you very much. My name is Stephen Davis. And thank you, Jennifer. And I live at 3209 West Fairview Place in Denver, 80211, otherwise known as the Bosler House, which I have to thank Jennifer Capetto and Gary Petrie here for being instrumental in helping to get that house, this house, brought back up to snuff. Anyway, this is a interesting house. So I was called by Annie Levinsky and Michael Flowers from Historic Denver, and they were looking for somebody to buy an old dilapidated house. And I am on that call list. So it happened to work out where I was able to purchase the property from the guys that were trying to tear the house down. So we're all pretty happy about that, I think. So that has worked out well. This is my fourth historic house, but it's the first one that I have designated. I'm working on many other historic homes in the neighborhood or in our city, over at Potter Highlands and Country Club, Montclair, all those kind of neighborhoods. So it's been kind of fun. People, I guess, perhaps think I have some idea what I'm doing, most of which I learned from Gary Petrie. So it's been quite a joy. So I do thank.
If you keep doing that, I'm going to have to recuse myself.
My wife would suggest that if Annie Levinsky was to suggest I do something, that she has me wrapped around her little finger, and that may be true. But her and Michael Flowers were instrumental in getting me to go forward with this and helping. Of course, Jason Morrison has been super helpful with the zoning, which is a mind-boggling process. And of course, Kara Hahn has kind of kept us all together moving forward to get to this point. So it's an honor to be before you guys again, and we've been having a lot of fun with this house so far. That's all I got.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. All right. Are there any questions for the applicant?
I would note that Michael Flowers is also here from Historic Denver, and he's the author of the application, so he may have something to add.
Yeah, Michael.
Oh, sorry. My name is Michael Flowers. I'm Director of Preservation Action at Historic Denver. We're located at 1420 North Ogden Street. So yeah, we wanted to thank Steve Davis. He sort of, grabbed up this house before it was demolished. It was the owners had applied for a CDE, so we're very grateful for Steve, sort of taking this house and saving it. We fully support his project as far as restoring the house, the zoning, as well as the additional units that he wants to put on the north side. And yeah, like I said, we're just in full support of this project, and we're really happy he picked it up and was able to save one of the oldest houses in Park Hill.
Great. Thank you, Michael. All right, I'll open it back up for questions. Any questions for either Steve or Michael? No?
I have one.
Okay.
Could I get a translation of EMX2X? Why is that, what is that as far as a zoning?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jason just unmuted himself. He can probably answer that better than the rest of us.
Great.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Jason Morrison, Senior City Planner with Community Planning and Development. I'm working on the rezoning application that's been submitted concurrent to this landmark application. To answer the question, so EMX2X is it's an urban edge mixed use zone district, and it allows up to 2 stories in height. I will note that the X indicates that the allowed uses in building forms, including drive-through services and drive-through restaurants, are more limited in the EMX than compared to the EMX2 district, meaning that they're not allowed. So for instance, you wouldn't see a gas station or a drive-through service on this particular property.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the zoning? No? And any questions about the designation application in general? All right, clear as a bell. So thanks for your time. If there aren't any questions for the applicants, then we'll go ahead and start the public comment period. So if there's anyone on the line who would like to make a comment, please use the hand raise button at this time, and we'll call on you one by one, and you'll have up to 3 minutes each
Great. So Amy, you are up first, or maybe only.
Hey, that's great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Harris. I live at 3455 Porch Street in Denver, which is just right down the street from the Robinson House. I also am here representing the Greater Park Hill community. And I am a representative on that board, which is the registered neighborhood organization. I represent District 1, which is where the Robinson House is located. And I wanted to just come to share our support of this designation. I think this is probably one of the easier decisions you'll probably have to make because it's so clear based on just how astounding it is that that house is still standing after all these years, and frankly through periods of not being well used. I mean, as a restaurant it was great, but for the past several years it's just been kind of sitting there. And when we learned, the Greater Park Hill community, we have a preservation subcommittee, and when we learned that the house was slated for demolition, we met, we talked, we wondered if there was any way that we could put a stop to it. And frankly, we were powerless. And I was really sad to know that that house was going to be demolished and replaced with apartments probably. And that's not happening anymore because Steve Davis came to quite literally save the day. So we enthusiastically support this project. And I just wanted to be here to say that in person. And I'm so excited to continue to watch the progress of the house being restored by Steve, since I get to walk by it pretty much every day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Stuart, you are next.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, my name is Stuart Hayden. I'm at 2525 Grape Street in the North Park Hill neighborhood, so not too far away. I just wanted to say that I fully support this designation, and I'm really excited to see it going through. But mostly I wanted to point out how it's a great example of the demolition review at work and a successful case. I know there's been some talk of amending the process once again, but I just wanted to point out that it does work, and thank Mr. Davis for obviously stepping forward in this case. And yeah, if someone else didn't do it, I was ready to apply myself for designation. So I'm glad someone else did it, and I'm glad it's gonna be saved, and I look forward to seeing where it goes. So thank you all for your hard work and effort.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Nope.
All right, great. Then with no other comments, I'll go ahead and close the hearing and we'll move into deliberation. So commissioners, what did you think about the application?
Kelly, this is Julie. I think it's a really good application. I am familiar with that house. And I believe that I will support it. I believe that it does meet the criteria as outlined by the application and as staff has explained.
Great, thanks, Julie. I see a lot of nodding heads.
Yeah,
Erica.
Kelly, this is Brad. Oh, go ahead.
You go first, Brad.
I agree with Julie. I think that it has a high level of integrity. Obviously, it's 30 years old, but I also think it really meets the criteria A, C, and G very well. Really significant in the historic development of that neighborhood in the city. So I think that's very important. It really has a distinct characteristic and architectural style with the Queen Anne style, and then a rarity in the urban environment. That one sometimes is a little bit harder to wrap your head around, but I think this is very clear because it really sets up kind of the story and the dialogue about how that neighborhood developed, and it is so rare in the neighborhood because of the way the development was. I think it really helps to tell the historical story about the development of a large portion of Denver. So I support staff recommendations.
Thanks, Brad. Well said. Erica, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, thanks. Yes, I fully agree that I think the application did a very great job of outlining how this property meets the 3 criteria that it's being designated under. I also wanted to state that I really appreciated the context provided in the application as far as not just how this house kind of came to be and then survived over the decades, but how the racial segregation and integration efforts were, part of that greater history of Park Hill. So I appreciated that being included in the application. I did have just a few minor suggestions that I thought might be helpful for, when I think of designations, I think of them not only laying the groundwork for why a place is important and should be preserved, but also as a document that can be looked back on in the future for providing guidance on what makes this important and features that future owners or future commissioners, future staff should be aware of. And so I, along those lines, thought that it might be helpful for the two surviving editions, one of which is called out as contributing, the 1913 edition, and the 1980s edition. I don't think this is too onerous a request that dimensions for those editions be given, just so because they're right up against each other. And I just thought it might be helpful to just kind of call out approximate size so that future folks have an idea of where and how big these editions are. In case for whatever reason, there's a question about what is the 1913 edition and what's the 1980s edition. Along those lines, I thought it might also be helpful to call out that it appears that the 1913 edition has more contemporary siding that I'm assuming relates more to the 1980s edition since it carries over onto that edition. But if you look at historic photos, the reveal of that horizontal siding is clearly smaller. So again, just kind of keeping in mind of like how we might provide some good guidance for future design review of this, as well as I believe at least one historic photo seems to suggest that the window on the south side of the 1913 edition is also not historic or not original. So again, just calling those out as detailed. I don't know. Okay, I will continue. So anyways, I just thought that would be
hit the wrong button.
helpful to have. And then same thing, I believe there's on the second to last page, there's a photo of the rear additions. And the caption on it is a little confusing because it references the 2005 edition, but I don't think that's actually shown in the photo. So if I'm correct in that, I thought it would be good to correct that caption. So again, people aren't confused about what's what. But other than those hopefully very minor things, I think they are, I would just like to thank the applicant, both the owner, Mr. Davis, and the author, Mr. Flowers, for their work on this. It's great to see, and I think this is a very strong application, and I support it. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, those were good catches, Erica. I think that's a good idea. It's always nice to give a little bit more background so that we can make those decisions in the future, have a more educated understanding of what's original, non-original, historic, not. So that all sounds great. Any other comments? I agree with everything that's been said. It's a great application, and it's really exciting to see that the demolition review process seem to have a happy outcome for, the neighborhood and the owner, and it seems like there's still a solution to increase development. So I think that that's all great. So I agree with what's been said. It clearly meets the criteria, so I'll support this. All right, so who's going to make the motion?
Madam Chair, this is Julie. I would love to make the motion.
Great.
Do I need to add any of the things that Erica mentioned, or will that be in recorded testimony for them enough?
Kara, what do you think on that? Is that just kind of a friendly suggestion? Do we need it to be formalized?
I was going to say friendly suggestion, but I want to make sure that Adam is okay with that.
Hi, Adam Hernandez, Assistant City Attorney. I'm actually unclear on what was being discussed there. The purview of the commission in a designation hearing is to recommend to approve or recommend to modify the application. So if this was just, you know, to correct maybe captions in the staff report, I do not think that needs to be in any sort of motion. If we're talking about modifying the proposal, then we do have to have a deeper discussion on what that would entail.
Okay, so I think Erica's comments were comments regarding the application, not the staff brief or the staff overview, but they were like minor things here and there, kind of like, you know, add a dimension, fix a typo in a caption. It's clear that I think everyone's saying it's clear that the application does meet the criteria and shows that, you know, the structure has integrity. So it's not like changing the application. It's more like a friendly comment about typos and things like that. Is that, and Erica, correct me if that's a misunderstanding, but
No.
Adam, does that make sense?
Somewhat. Again, I'm struggling to see if this is a modification of the actual application. And I guess in terms of measurements, that doesn't seem like something that can be done right now, right? That would be something that I would assume would almost have to be brought back to this commission, because I don't think anyone could do those on the fly right now.
Yeah, I think you're kind of answering the question for us. I think this is just a friendly suggestion to the applicant. And if, because Kara, aren't there after, so this would move on to city council for review. And then what is the process for, then is there a period where anything gets revised before it's like final, or?
I mean, it's typically not, but we have in the past for other designations for things like the caption, like correcting the caption, because there have been things like on a I want to say it's the Stall House, or maybe not, but on one of a fairly more recent one that came through, like there was Broadway in the application and it really should have been Lincoln in the application, and those were corrected before they went to city council. And so they were basically like minor typos that we corrected in the application so that city council so that the final record was accurate as it went to city council. So that's been the precedent of what we've done for minor things like that. If it's just, you know, like remove the addition in the caption, those have been things that we have just edited out per your guidance so that the final application that is approved is accurate.
Yeah. Erica, would that?
Yeah, I'll just say that what Kara is describing is very much the nature of my comments. And so really just kind of friendly suggestions of how to make this certain sections a little more clear and a little more accurate, but otherwise, you know, the substance, the criteria, the integrity, all of that remains the same.
Adam, does that answer your question?
I guess, are we asking for changes to be made in the application? I guess that's the fundamental question that I'm seeking.
I think Erica was making a friendly suggestion that they could make a couple changes. I think we would all approve it whether or not those changes were made. One of those changes is as simple as just correcting a caption. That's just a little error. So it's an approval of the application, but if they were to clean up a caption between now and the city council meeting, that seems not to be altering the application. It's not the substance. It's just like a typo. And I don't know, is that wrong to be able to update a typo?
I would say you probably want to, if you're good with the designation criteria being met, that you would recommend approval with the condition that the applicant correct errors in the application that you all have found. And I guess I would just call out those specific errors again.
Okay. So Julie, I know you wanted to make the motion. Do you feel that you captured those from Erica's comments, or Erica, would you prefer to take a stab at this?
Yeah, I'd actually prefer Erica do it. I'll second it, but
sorry for adding complications. Just so I'm sorry, is this a conditional approval or a?
So we can't approve it. We forward it to city council, right? So I think we'd still, the motion, the suggested motion would still be accurate in that sense. Sorry, I'm trying to flip back to that page. But Adam, you said you would still say with the condition that the following error be corrected in the report.
Let's change that a bit. And again, I'm just looking at 30-4 subsection 8 on how we need to go about this. Maybe the way to draft it or to document this is to recommend approval with the modification of however you feel needs to be modified.
Okay. So I think I understand. I will state the motion and with a phrase at the end about modification. Okay. I move to recommend approval and forward to City Council the landmark designation of 3435 Albion Street, application number 2021 dash, I'm sorry, I have this. Is it 2021L-10? Okay. Based on the landmark ordinance criteria A, C, and G, citing as findings of fact for this recommendation, the application form, public testimony, and the staff report, with the modification of correcting inaccurate typos regarding the additions and providing a few more details about the existing additions on the rear.
Thank you, Erica. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second that.
Thank you, Julie. All right. If there's no further discussion on the motion, I'll call for a vote. George.
I love it. Yes. Yay.
Brad.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Erica.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So this application will be forwarded to City Council for review. And congratulations to the applicants for putting forth a great application, and good luck. All right.
And I just want to apologize for clicking the wrong button. I was trying to close something and it I paused the recording, but we didn't miss it. For the record of the people listening to this after the fact, nothing was missed. Erica paused what she said, and then I clicked resume right away. So
great. So the next item on the agenda, we need to set a public hearing for let's see, 650 Downing Street. So, sorry, I'm flipping back to the agenda since we don't actually have materials for this. So yeah, it'll be a hearing to review the demolition of the front facade feature being a porch on this property. So we'd like to set the public hearing for April 19th. Would someone be able to make a motion for that?
I can make the motion for that.
Thank you, Brad.
I move to set the public hearing for project number 2022-COA-106, 650 Downing Street for April 19th, 2022.
Thanks. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Erica. All right, let's go ahead and vote. George?
Aye.
Brad?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Erica?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
Kelly? Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote, so the motion passes and we will see that project for a hearing on April 19th. All right, so now we're going to move into our design review projects. So you can see on the screen, this is the process for this portion of our agenda. So very similar to what we just went through with the hearing. So I'll announce the project and our landmark staff will introduce the application and provide their recommendation. Then we'll go ahead and hear from the applicant. They'll have up to 10 minutes. And then we'll open it up for public comments. So unlike the hearing, the comment period for design review projects is 2 minutes per person. And just like before, you'll use the hand raise button on the bottom of Zoom to let us know that you'd like to make a comment. After public comments are done, the commission will move into deliberation and vote. So the first project we have up for design review today is 2022-COA-104, and it's at 735 Milwaukee Street. So Abby, go ahead.
Hello. So proposal is for the demolition of a detached garage and construction of a new rear yard ADU. So the current zoning for this lot does not allow for the construction of an ADU, but the applicant is currently going through the rezoning process to request a change from the current zoning USUC, which does not allow ADUs, to USUC1, which does allow ADUs. Overall, Landmark is generally supportive of ADUs, so we consider this to be just more of a zoning detail to work out, since generally Landmark allows ADUs wherever the zoning allows for them. So we find review an ADU here to be equally appropriate to an ADU in other historic districts. The primary residence at 735 Milwaukee is 1.5 story Spanish eclectic house. The primary residence features round arched windowed and door openings, stuccoed cladding, and a red tile roof. So here is the current site plan. So you can see at the rear there hashed is the footprint of the garage that is proposed for demolition, and there is a photo of the garage proposed for demolition. So based on the garage design and on Sanborn maps, this garage does appear to be an original feature of the property. The garage references the Spanish eclectic design of the primary residence and its use of stucco and use of tile decorative roofing. The garage is minimally visible from public vantage points, with just a corner of the structure peeking out from behind the primary residence. The East 7th Avenue Historic District designation does not make any mention of garages as being contributing features of the district. Though the garage design does reflect the historic residence, overall staff find that it's a simple, small scale utilitarian building that does not have a lot of much visibility. As such, Landmark staff does not find that it would significantly contribute to the character of the district, or that it would be a significant loss if it was demolished. So as such, Landmark staff is recommending approval of the demolition request for the garage, but if the commission were to find that they believe that the garage is contributing, then a public hearing would need to be set for the garage demolition. So here is a site plan then of the proposed work. So you see there the existing residence, then the new ADU, which will be located approximately in the same location as the detached garage is currently. And then you see some additional new site work as well, some new fencing and new patio area there at the rear. So here's kind of an overview of the proposed ADU structure. So it will be 1.5 stories. It will feature a front gabled roof with a gabled dormer on the north side. Staff finds that the ADU is a simplified version of the Spanish eclectic style of the primary residence. The use of stucco, red tile roofing, and closed eaves will relate the ADU to the primary residence. Also, the use of simple 1/1 windows without divided lights and rectilinear window openings will help identify the ADU as new construction. So here are the elevations. So, and you can see there kind of the relationship to the primary residence shown there in some of the drawings. Staff finds that overall the height of the ADU is compatible with the district context and that the mass and form are subordinate to the primary structure. We find it's a simplified ADU, but it relates to the primary structure. So there are some additional views there. You can see the ADU will have some minimal visibility there from the street, but it is set back quite a bit from the front facade of the house, so it will be fairly minimally visible. So staff is recommending approval. The applicant has also met with the chair of the Landmark and Zoning Committee of the East 7th Avenue Neighborhood Association, and they are recommending approval as well, and those comments were included in your packet for reference.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff?
I have one question just really about the zoning. So that's just ongoing right now, the discussions about whether or not the zoning will be changed. Is that a slam dunk, or is that something that
it looks like
requires
Karen,
a little
I
more
know
thought?
it's in the process. I'm not sure if it's gone to where is that with City Council?
I attended the city council meeting, I want to say a few weeks ago, and they unanimously approved the change to the rezoning. So it has been rezoned within the last few weeks.
Thank you.
Good to know. Good question. Any other questions? Nope. All right. Is the applicant present?
He's been moved over.
Great. All right. When you're ready, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Please start with your name and address for the record. You have up to 10 minutes.
So I'm Charles McDonnell. I'm the owner of the property and the applicant at 735 Milwaukee Street. The existing garage that you saw is in fairly poor shape. We did send some pictures with our application, and originally the garage was entered off of Milwaukee Street. That driveway has gone away as well as the curb cut. So I'm a little concerned about the integrity of the existing garage. because it has a garage door in the front and the back. So with needing to rebuild the garage, we thought that the addition of the ADU to get some more density would be a good application. We want it to blend with the house, and after it's all completed, no one knows that work was done, would be our goal. We did, as Kara said, we did pass city council on the rezoning. So I don't have anything else to add, but I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you for your time. Are there any questions for the applicant? Nope. All right. Thanks for your time. Seeing as there are no questions from the commissioners, let's go ahead and see if there are any public comments. If you have a public comment for this project, please use the hand raise button at this time.
No one has raised their hand.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm assuming there's no recap. So we'll go ahead and move into deliberation. Commissioners, you saw the application and the staff brief. How did everyone feel this meets the guidelines? And actually, before we do that, let's just confirm that we're all in agreement that this would be considered non-contributing to the district. Because if you feel it's contributing, then as Abby said, a public hearing would have to be set for its demolition. So did everyone agree with staff's assessment on this, that it's non-contributing to the district? Okay.
It's mostly invisible. Its contribution, if any, would be minimal. So I don't think the property loses anything appreciable by replacing the garage with the ADU in this particular case.
All right. Great, and it is very common that we find, our historic districts don't typically list garages as contributing in the designation applications for the district. So that's we've seen this happen multiple times. So for anyone who's joining us in the meeting today, this isn't the first time we've seen a garage of that age that we have determined to be non-contributing because they're not listed as such in the designation of the district. Okay, so since we're all on the same page and we're considering this to be non-contributing to the district, then how did everybody feel about the design, and do you feel it meets the guidelines? All right, I'm going to call on people. Brad, go for it.
Kelly. I agree with staff's recommendation. I think it meets the guidelines. I think it's just a nice, simple little garage that takes design cues from the existing house, but a little bit cleaned up, and so I think it meets the guidelines well.
Thanks, Brad. I see Anne and George nodding their heads.
Yep.
Julie, yep. So I think we're all in agreement. And I do think that the siting of this, since the property is up kind of a bit from the street and the sidewalk too, it's less perceptible from the street. So I think that also helps that it's not distracting. Okay, well, if there's no further comments and we all agree with staff's assessments of the guidelines, then who's going to make the motion?
I'll
I'll
do
make the
that.
motion.
Okay.
Go for it.
All right, I'll go for it. I move to approve application number 2022-COA-104 for the demolition of the garage and construction of an ADU at 735 Milwaukee as per design guidelines 2.38, 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, 4.6, 4.18, 4.19 character defining features for the East 7th Avenue Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Brad. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, George. All right, let's vote. George?
Aye.
Brad?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Erica?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
And Kelly? Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So the project is approved. All right, the next project on our design review agenda today is 2022-COA-87 at 451 Cherokee Street. Go ahead, Crystal.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Let me see here. Okay, so this is for the Infill Phase 2 design detail application for 451 Cherokee Street. The Phase 1 submittal was unanimously approved by the Commission last year on the April 6th meeting. The applicant is proposing to construct a new tandem house single-family residence on an existing zone lot with the primary structure already there at 450 Delaware. This is located in the Baker Neighborhood Historic District. The proposed tandem house will front onto Cherokee Street and is designed in the Queen Anne style and will have 2-story massing. There we go. So here you can see the side elevations for the new proposed structure. You can see the proposed in-wall dormers here at each elevation. The house will be clad in a true 3-coat stucco with round scallop shingles in the gable ends. Windows will be aluminum clad wood with a minimum 2-inch inset, and the roofing material will be asphalt shingles. So here you can see the front elevation on the right. This shows that 2-story Queen Anne style design with the common nested gable. The home will have a 1-story porch with a wood half-light front door, a triple window at the first floor with 2 narrow windows flanking 1 wider center window, as well as those gable returns at the eaves. These are characteristic of designs found in the district. Again, the home will be clad in that true 3-coat stucco, and again, the round scalloped shingles at the gable ends and at the front porch. The rear elevation you can see is a little bit atypical. It has that overhead roll-up door that goes to a storage room and some atypical window patterns. However, these will not be visible from the street. So here you can see some of the window details and the gable return details. Windows will have a precast concrete sill and stucco headers, except for the windows in the gable ends or on the dormers, which will have a fiberboard trim, as you can see here. And then here you can see all of the material details for the house, as well as the light fixtures, chosen doors and window materials. Just to clarify, that exterior black metal door with all the multiple lights, that's more of a screen door, so that'll be in front of the wood door, so it's not just a single door, but a screen door. All the windows will be aluminum clad wood windows, and the house will largely be clad in this true 3-coat stucco with that sand float finish. The dormers and gable ends are proposed to be that round scallop shingle. The applicants originally proposed the true wood material, which you can see here. However, the applicants emailed me this morning and stated that they would like to change this material to real cedar for the round scallop shingles so they can achieve that natural cut profile. And staff is supportive of making that change. So here you can see the isometric views of the design. The proposed infill structure's overall design details are characteristic of the district. However, as noted in the staff report, staff found that true wood composite shingles do not match the natural edges of a cut shingle. So staff had recommended adding a condition that the true wood composite round shingles be cut to have what appears to be a natural edge. However, in light of the applicant's request that they sent us this morning, staff is recommending approval and that we change the condition that the true wood composite shingles be changed to real cedar round scallop shingles. And I also just wanted to point out that staff had you sent sheet 14, which was accidentally somehow deleted from the application that was posted to the website. So that was just an error, but that page will be added back to the final application prior to final approval. So therefore staff is recommending approval of the application with the condition that the true wood composite shingles be changed to real cedar round scallop shingles.
Thanks, Crystal. I do have a question for you about that, not about the shingles, but since you mentioned that sheet 14 was missing, do we need to just include that as a condition as well?
I'm not sure if it needs to be a
include.
condition because I
Okay.
accidentally deleted it somehow and they had originally submitted it. And I will be adding it back, obviously, because they sent it to me. But I don't know if that's a question for Jen or Adam.
Yeah, Jen or Adam, either of you. It was already sent to us, so technically it was part of the application we reviewed today. It just wasn't sent a week ago.
Yeah, I would think that a condition would be fine, but Adam, let me know if you disagree.
No, if you receive that page and you've reviewed it, I think that's fine. I don't think you need to add a condition to state that.
Great. All right, any other questions for staff? Nope. Okay, and I believe we've got the applicant here. So when you're ready, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Please start with your name and address for the record. You have up to 10 minutes.
Hi, I'm Carrie Barron, and I live at 74 West Byers Place, and I'm the architect on the project. Since we had the infill part 1 application review, I just wanted to mention that we did get a variance for coverage after that from zoning, and just wanted to mention that. And then apart from that, I think most of the information that Crystal mentioned was in line with what I was going to say, just keeping with the original intent of the infill part 1 application and the massing and everything, moving the details forward, trying to keep the details as simple as possible in terms of palette, and wanting to be in line with changing those scallop shingles to wood to keep the profile consistent with what we want to achieve in the neighborhood. So that's all I really have to add. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Yeah, are there any questions for the applicant? Nope. I think it was all clear. Thanks for your time. Are there any comments for this project? Please use the hand raise button at this time, if so.
Just raise their hand.
All right, then let's move into deliberation. So what did the commissioners think? Do you agree with the staff brief, the assessment of the guidelines? And again, remember, we've already approved mass form and context, so this is just for the design details.
Yeah,
Erica.
Yeah, yes, I agree with the staff report of that it meets the design guidelines with materials recognizable as current construction, and the windows and doors compatible with the primary building and the surrounding context. So I support the application and would approve it with the condition of the real cedar shingles.
Thanks, Erica. George, did you have something to add?
I'm just looking at the streetscape here, and I think the house is a very compliant addition to the whole streetscape. I'd be happy to support it. Again, going with the shingles too. So.
Great. And I see a lot of nodding heads, so I think we're all on the same page there. So for whoever is going to make the motion, remember to add that condition about the shingles being changed to round scalloped cedar shingles. And I did also notice that this says approve application for mass form and context, so that should be changed for design details. So who's going to make the motion?
I can make the motion.
Thanks, Erica.
I move to conditionally approve application number 2022-COA-087 for the design details of the proposed infill structure at 451 Cherokee Street, as per presented testimony, submitted documentation, guidelines 4.2, 4.3, 4.5, 4.6, 4.8, the Baker neighborhood character defining features, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report, with the condition that the shingles be changed to, or the drawings be changed to show real cedar round scalloped shingles.
Thank you, Erica. Do we have a second?
I second.
A second.
I think Brad, maybe you got that first. It was close. All right, I'll call for the vote. George?
Aye.
Brad?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Gary? Erica? Anne?
Aye.
And Kelly? Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion.
I didn't hear Erica at all.
Oh.
Aye.
Yeah, just making sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. All right, we have a unanimous vote, so the motion passes and the project is conditionally approved. Okay, the next project is 2022-COA-100, and it's at 431 Acoma Street. Abby, go ahead.
Okay, so project under review is a design detail application for a duplex with a rear yard ADU. So the commission reviewed this recently at the January 25th meeting and denied that previous application. Just kind of give you a summary of what was said at the previous meeting and where we're at. So here you see the design that was presented at the January 25th meeting, kind of an interim design that was presented to staff, and then the current proposal. So at the previous meeting with the commission, it was determined that the proposed combination of brick and stucco cladding, as well as other proposed design detail features, did not meet landmark guidelines. Commission was particularly concerned with guideline 4.3. Comments from the commission included that the design read conceptually more like a single-story building with an addition than as an intentional two-story design. Commission suggested using a single material on the facade and bringing the coins all the way up at the corners. There were comments that the steel bands at the parapet felt top-heavy. Commission felt that the scaling elements felt off and that there was a lack of hierarchy between the first and second floors. Suggesting that a more defined base was needed, and overall recommendation for restudying and looking at historic terraces in the district for reference and making sure that the infill related to district precedents. At the meeting, the Baker R&O also expressed concerns with the use of different cladding materials on the first and second floors of the duplex, as well as concerns with that same treatment being used on the ADU. They were also concerned with the lack of detailing on the ADU. The commission expressed similar concerns with the ADU and suggested that the applicant return to the RNO for feedback on the ADU design. So the design there that you see in the middle on the slide was a proposal that was submitted to staff after the last commission meeting. It's included here in the presentation at the request of the applicant who wanted to show this version as well. Staff felt that this did not adequately address the commission comments. It introduced additional complexity to the facade without addressing concerns with scaling. Staff also felt it made the duplex look even more like a one-story building with a rooftop addition due to that additional kind of detailing there that kind of resembled a parapet design. Staff shared our concerns with the applicant, and then the applicant followed up with the current proposal. So I'll go through then and review some of the changes made since you reviewed this previously. So the applicant brought the brick height up to clad the second floor, though the parapet still features stucco cladding. The brick will wrap onto the north and south sides, extending to the chimneys. And the height of the brick coins, as well as the kind of central brick feature, have all been raised to extend up to the height of the parapet. Staff does have some concerns with this. While we feel the use of brick for the first and second floors looks great, that all looks good, but we have concern with the use of a different material for just the parapet. We find like treating the parapet in a different material doesn't fit district precedences. Looking at the other terrace houses within the district, brick is used throughout. You don't get a change of material at the cornice. So we would still recommend further study of other terrace styles within the district to come up with something that looks more unified. Kind of looks stuck on. We're particularly concerned with the way also it wraps. So you kind of just get a thin band of stucco there along the top at the side, which also just doesn't really look integrated into the design. So here you see the porch from the previous design and then the current submission. So some changes have been made here. The front door has changed from a solid door to a 3/4 light door. A metal railing was added at the porch. The porches are also a little bit shallower in depth. The alignment of the metal porch post with a steel channel at the roof has also been changed, so that the porch posts are offset rather than located directly under the steel channel. Staff does not find that this meets guideline 4.16. We think that the porch post should visually support the roof above, rather than this offset kind of creating an unbalanced, somewhat floating effect. Okay, so here is a comparison of the side elevation. So the top, what you reviewed previously, and at the bottom, the current submission. So you can see the brick has been wrapped around. So the brick wraps around on the second story to the chimneys, and then beyond that, the second story is clad in stucco. But the height of the first floor brick has been lowered so that now the stucco begins on the first floor rather than at the second floor level. There's also been some changes to window proportions. These are those are fairly minor. The backyard wall has been simplified by eliminating and before at the doorway in the wall, the height was higher and staff had recommended lowering that. The wall was also previously shown as being stone. It appears that that has now been changed to brick cladding, though there was still one label on the drawings that said that the wall was going to be stone. So that still needs to be clarified. Then at the ADU, you can see that a jog in the brick height has been introduced so that the kind of brick height increases in height towards the alley. But overall, it still is using the combination of the two materials. So staff have some concerns with these changes. We don't find that the side elevations that meet guideline 4.3 with the scaling, because we find the proportions that are now proposed with the brick and the stucco are awkward. Particularly it makes on the primary structure, it makes that second floor feel really tall, having that very large stucco area. So we feel that if you're going to do the combination of brick and stucco, that brick height needs to be raised to the second floor level, so that it's more proportional. And then we also have concerns in the way that jog and the brick is used at the garage, sorry, the ADU as well. So here you can see the ADUs. And so the top is the previous submission, the bottom is the current submission. So additional detailing has been added to the alley facade, though it's not clearly labeled or detailed on the plans. It appears that the applicant is proposing to use steel channel at the cornice and window headers, though this isn't called out. But some other detailing has been removed. So detailing has been removed from the east side of the ADU, and there's also brick detailing that was previously proposed at the garage door and window openings that has been removed. And then the height of the brick on the alley facade has been raised so that it is now at the base of the windows. Staff is still concerned with some of the scaling elements and articulation on the ADU. We find that kind of the change in height's a little awkward, and we just need more detailing here. We also don't feel some of the concerns from the previous meeting, both from the commission and the RNO, about it reading like a brick building that had a second floor addition added to it. We don't feel that concern has been addressed. So while some of the revisions successfully addressed the commission feedback, carrying that brick up further on the facade, staff has concerns about some of the other design modifications made and do not find that all of the commission concerns have been addressed. Due to the number of concerns and the fact these concerns could really be addressed in a variety of ways rather than really having a simple, straightforward condition, staff is recommending denial.
Thanks. Are there any questions for staff? Nope. All right. Is the applicant present?
Yes, I just moved him over. There he goes.
Great. All right. When you're ready, go ahead and unmute yourself. Please start with your name and address.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, hi, this is Scott Robinson joining you guys again. Thanks for having me. I'm with Lodestone Design Group, 206 5th Street, Suite 200 in Frederick, Colorado. And so I'd like to thank Abigail for her multiple reviews of our our intermediate kind of design. We're looking to get feedback from her and trying to address all the commission's comments. And with the current submission, we thought that we've integrated most of those, or all of those revisions that they were seeking, particularly in the duplex. We feel that raising the brick definitely ties the new structure into the historic buildings much more than previously. And then we wanted also to not replicate older buildings. We want it to be a new building that has characteristics of the older buildings. So we wanted to introduce newer, more modern materials. That's why we chose the steel and the stucco. And we kept the parapet stucco as a way to introduce more of the modern materials, but not so much in your face on the street level. So it introduces the stucco, and as you wrap around, as you get past the chimneys, the stucco gets greater and more into the more contemporary materials. as far as the at the porch, the columns, the only thing we really changed on the columns was how they're going to be attached to each other. So the columns haven't moved, the beams haven't moved where it's being held up. It's just a connection detail where there's on the previous submission there's a line that's not there, and now there's a line there showing where the beams butt against each other. So that's the only real difference. It's almost a difference of having a flange or welding them together. So if the commission would like us to change it back to the previous one or submit a detail of how the new one's going to be connected, more of a connection detail, we would more than welcome that to submit that to you. But the beams and the posts and the columns are the same. So there's the beams are actually I beams that connect to each other. They're not C channels, and the posts are underneath. It's still underneath the I beam. It's just where the two beams that holding up the roof connect each other. That connection is changed. And then as you get around to the side again, we didn't carry the brick all around the whole house again to introduce more of the contemporary materials, and that was a natural break point rather than going past the chimney, since the chimney is a large, it's brick all the way to the above the roof. So it's just a natural stopping point to introduce more of the more modern materials. And as Abigail said, as we get to the back, we did make the wall in between the properties all one height. It is changed to brick. I apologize for the anomaly in the call out that got missed. And that's my fault. But it is, we took your concerns and made it brick as well. So everything is all the same brick. And then as you move towards the ADU, we again wanted to have some context to the main structure. So again, we raised the brick on the alley side, and we added a parapet, a step parapet, not a multi-step parapet, but it did a parapet. So that actually ties into the duplex's parapet with the same C channel and same stucco in relation to the duplex. And then on the side, we jogged the brick to carry some of the change in elevation of the parapet along the side of the building, just so it wasn't one single slab. So just to have some design characteristics. And the vertical lines you see in the stucco, those are just expansion joints. So those would need to be there so that the stucco doesn't crack. And then on the alley side, we removed some of the brick headers. It made it more simplified, and then we added, raised the brick to one and to balance the design and the cost. And that's one of the reasons why we didn't make both buildings all stucco all the way to the ceiling, is to balance the design, the cost, and the buildability of the building. So we think we struck a good balance with the different materials, and we hope to look forward to hearing your comments, and hopefully we can move forward. Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Are there any questions that commissioners have for the applicant?
I have a question, Kelly. Scott, I was looking through your details, and it's at the brick window details, the rendering makes the channel look like it's applied to the exterior of the brick. And I know that that's how you're doing it, looks like with the stucco, but is the intent that at the brick steel headers that channel would be kind of integrated with the brick and not applied over top of the brick?
Yes, I apologize for that. Yeah, so the C channel would the brick would be resting on top of the C channel, essentially, and not be applied, to the face of the brick.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. Good question. Any other questions for the applicant? Nope. All right. Thank you for your time. Okay, are there any public comments on this project? Please use the hand raise button at this time.
Let me just set my timer. Ozzy, you are up. Go ahead and unmute when you're ready.
Great, thank you. Want to thank Landmark staff for forwarding this kind of the interim steps of this design to our neighborhood committee so that we could see them. We weren't able to meet to do a general motion, so I'm just representing my own opinions right now. And I'm focusing on the ADU since that's the element we were kind of most concerned at not having had a chance to address before. Briefly, I feel like this is a unique building in the neighborhood because of the unusual zoning of the site. I mean, there aren't any other duplex ADUs, and it's not a bad thing to be proposing a duplex ADU. I think it could be a really exciting kind of prototype for something that doesn't exist yet. The thing is, the scale of the building, it's actually at the point where it's bigger than most primary houses in the neighborhood. And the level of detailing on it just isn't there. It's and the guidelines say that a new structure should have simplified detailing elements, but it doesn't say that it should be plain. And this is just currently kind of too simplified relative to the scale of what it is and what it could be. I share staff's concern about the horizontal division. I think it actually makes it read bigger than it is. And I think the step to the front parapet helped it, but stepping the side parapets would be also a very helpful way to make it less of a box because our low sloped roof buildings in the neighborhood generally aren't boxes. They generally step down in the direction of drainage. So those are thoughts. Thank you all.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Get your name and address for the record, Ozzy.
Oh.
Ozzy Friedrich, 528 West First Avenue.
Thank you. And no one else has their hand raised.
All right. Then let's go ahead and move into, well, first, Abby, is there any recap you have? Nope. Okay. Then let's move into deliberation. So, given the assessment staff did and what we've heard from the applicant and the public comment, what was everybody's thoughts about how this relates to our guidelines? Second time we're seeing the design details. So, I mean, I personally think it was a step in the right direction, but I do tend to agree with staff that the detailing between the brick and then the stucco at the parapet is very atypical for the district.
I have a question also. Could we go back to the next view, the side view of the project? No, the drawings of the, keep going. Yeah, there we are. Is it an optical illusion, or in the current submission are windows C, C, and D on the second floor taller than the ones that precede them towards the front of the building?
That would have been a good question for the applicant, I think. I don't know if
some of the window proportions have changed on the sides.
But George, you're asking if window C on the second floor is in fact bigger than window C on the first floor?
C, C, and D look taller than H and H on the second floor there.
Oh.
There are dimensions. All the options do have dimensions in the packet if you want to look up and see what a particular window dimension is.
Okay, it just struck me that they were different sized.
Mm-hmm. So Kelly, I can start just with some of my thoughts and just kind of starting at the main, the duplex first, and not talking about the ADU. So I think there's been some improvements made, but I think that the biggest struggle that's going on here is there's an idea or kind of an initial design thought that is continuing to find its way into the drawings, and it's not helping. And I think it has to do with the parapet. I think that now, you know, there was a struggle with it looking like it was an addition put on top of a one-story, and now everything just kind of got slid up, and it's completely unresolved, and it really doesn't relate very well to how buildings would have been treated historically. And it's not a good, I would argue it's not a good modern interpretation of that either. It's very busy, overly complex. You know, when you look at some of the detailing, how that would go together, you can see it on the left image where the stucco, you know, the sawtooth is where it steps. You know, you end up seeing a channel attached, and then on the end of that, you see stucco. So that's not it's not a resolved detail like you would see historically throughout the district. So I think it's just a matter of, it's an idea that's not working. It's not helping the project anymore. And I would take a step back and just really say, what are we trying to achieve with that? The building still looks very modern, right? So I think it's a simple detailing. I would say if this would have come in and there was no channel up at the top, and it was just brick all the way to the top, and it was nicely detailed, and it has a nice, you know, steel porch that's well thought out, I would imagine that a lot of us would probably have a pretty positive reaction to it. But I think this overly complicates kind of the language, and the doesn't reflect the character of sort of the historic context there, or reflect it in a positive way. And I think there's some other things when you come around the building, you know, some of the brick got pushed down maybe a little further, some of those transitions on the backside. I think it's fine to transition from brick to stucco on the backside of the building, but it's like, where does that really want to be? Where does that have the most impact? So I think Abigail's suggestion was that transitions at the first floor, and I could see a lot of benefit for that when you look at how the back porches would tie into that. It would be nice to actually tie into that base material if it's a porch that's at the base. So I think, you know, going to guideline 4.3 and then 4.6, I still have concerns about all these transitions, and I agree with staff that it's overly complex and it doesn't relate back very well to the historic context. I think it's got too many things going on, trying to do too many things. And then if I jump to the ADU, I don't see any changes really in what we saw before, other than a step in the front. I think it suffers a little bit from some of the same things that are happening with the house, just for the duplex. And it is a big building. I think that was one of the comments that Ozzy made. How it's very kind of flat and long. So how do you articulate it in such a way that gives it a little more scale that will feel more appropriate, given how big it really is? So I think those are my big concerns. So in terms of the staff report, I actually agree with the comments in the staff report. I'm less concerned about the porch detailing when you look at it in the 3D rendering. I think it's probably a little misleading when you look at it in straight on elevation, but I understand it better in the 3D rendering, where that front cross beam is actually recessed a little bit and the posts are sitting, you know, directly under the two beams that are coming straight out from the building. So that one I have less concern with.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I agree with everything you mentioned, especially about the issue where it just seems like the design problem that we were seeing before has just now pushed up to the top of the duplex. I completely agree with that. And I think that the applicant actually has provided some great examples of homes in the district that they could take inspiration for the parapet. And there's a couple different ways they could adjust that, you know, based on whatever they want to design that. But right now there's just a clear disconnect, and it doesn't fit the district patterns, which of course the guidelines, you know, specifically 4.3 and 4.6 state to use for contextual reference. So I agree with that and what you said on the ADU. I don't want to repeat you, but yeah. Anne.
I totally understand where you and Brad are coming from. I disagree. I actually think that the applicant's done a great job of listening to what everybody had to say, of bringing the coins up. And I think that I worry tremendously about the staff report being way too prescriptive. That I think this is a very interesting interpretation of what a cornice is. And it may not be one that comes to mind for any of us, but this is what the designer saw. And to me, it's a really pretty good example of 4.5. You can recognize it as new construction. And I think it's for the applicant to decide on the detailing. I really, you might, you know, some people might find it fussy, but I don't think that actually precludes it's actually meeting guideline 4.5. I feel the same way about the porch. I think we've seen lots of applications that have very interesting and different approaches to how porches are supported. Some of them are even just cantilevered. And I think, as I said, I worry that the staff report is way too prescriptive when it comes to the main house. I think for the main project, it does actually a pretty good job. I think the ADU definitely is missing some detail, but again, I would be very worried about being too prescriptive in how we react to it. And I guess that I actually would be tending towards wanting to say that this is actually a conditional approval, with the house, with the main structure being fine the way it is right now, and asking for some redesign and additional detail on the ADU.
So Anne, with your comment on being supportive of a conditional approval, what would the conditions be on the ADU? I'm just curious that you would see.
I would ask for there to be additional detail on the ADU as per the presented testimony.
So not a change in the design, just providing more details of the current design. Okay. Thanks, Anne. So we've got two different perspectives on this. So I'd like to hear if other commissioners, yeah, Gary.
I tend to agree with what Anne is saying, although if we do a conditional approval, I think it might need more conditions to relate to what we are asking for in terms of improvement on the ADU design. Just asking for more detail, I think, is too ambiguous to be helpful to the applicant. And I'd hate to have to see this come back yet again, or have the staff have to determine whether the conditions of a conditional approval are met just by saying we want to see more detail on the ADU. You know, I'm bothered by the step in the height of the masonry on the ADU, particularly about, you know, how were buildings that were a combination of brick and some other material on the facade historically detailed. Other than a water table course or a wainscot, the upper portion of a building, whether it had siding or stucco, would actually not step back from the brick, that the upper story would sort of flush out with the brick so that the drainage would be straight down. It wouldn't land on a brick ledge. When the brick band was higher than a wainscot in terms of typical design. And so I think, you know, I think there's some awkwardness about how the stucco and the brick meet And that awkwardness is complicated by jogging the height of the brick on the ADU. So I think the ADU needs some more work, and I don't know that just conditional approval and asking for more detail is going to help the staff decide whether or not the resubmittal meets our conditional approval. Regarding the main building, I think it has a similar problem with the back, with where the brick on the back behind the chimney stops, whether it stops at the floor level or at some other location. And so initially when I saw this, I thought a conditional approval might be appropriate, but I think there's just too many detail adjustments that need to be made. And I think the architect needs to decide how to make them and present them and justify them to us. So I guess while I agree with what Anna said about some of the concerns and that the staff report might be overly prescriptive, I don't think we can conditionally approve this in a way that without too many conditions. I don't think we can have a clear set of a few conditions that would lend itself to a conditional approval. Although I do agree that this has moved generally in a good direction. I think that's all I have to say.
Madam Chair, this is Julie. I'll go ahead and make it very short here. I hope. I do think this application, especially with the main building, has gone a long way to make me feel more comfortable with it. I have struggled with the parapet. Part of me agrees with Brad. Another part of me agrees with Anne. It's not probably my design choice, but the design guidelines do not rest on what I think I would build. So I do think that it definitely meets, the guideline that it's definitely distinct as new construction. There's a lot going on up there. Like I said, that's probably not how I would build it. But I think that it meets the design guideline. The ADU does need some detail, and I absolutely agree with Gary. I think piling on a bunch of conditions would be overly prescriptive for sure, and maybe not as helpful as just the testimony when they go back and listen to it. That's my hope at any rate. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks. Yeah, Erica.
I agree with Brad's assessment of this in that I think if the staff report is overly prescriptive, I think it's because they're trying to work with what the design has kept evolving from. And so Brad's kind of assessment of this underlying design is still there of the way the parapet is stepped and the steel channels and the treatment of stucco at the very end. I think all of that is still there. And so I think staff is responding to that, not so much trying to prescribe exactly what to do, but that we keep seeing the level change of where that material stops and another material begins. But I fully agree with staff and Brad and Kelly that I think it does not meet design guidelines 4.3 or 4.6 in that it's atypical use of material and doesn't include typical features and rhythms of material and scale that we see in the district. So I would, I guess I'm just kind of adding on to putting another stone on the other side of the scale, but those are my thoughts. And so I would support denial at this time.
All right, thank you. George, did you have anything to add before we look towards a motion? Just didn't want to ignore you there.
I was very interested in the viewpoints between Brad and Ann, and I think I'm sort of 60% favoring Ann's point of view that, you know, we need to easily recognizable as new construction. Again, like Julie said, not the way I would have done it or imagined to see it, but I think it's within the limits. The ADU, yes, you need some more details there, but I'm and the brickwork on the side, there's so little visibility there from this viewpoint as to whether it ends where it does in this drawing, or it's another 2 or 3 courses higher. I think is less to me than how it fronts onto the street, and I think it's okay. And I would recommend, that again, the main duplex, I think, is good the way it stands, and the ADU needs some more discussion. So.
Okay, great. So I think we're all kind of on the same page about the ADU. There's some mixed opinions about the primary structure, the duplex design, but either way, it sounds like, it'd be hard to quantify those in specific conditions
Exactly.
to make this approvable. So I think it sounds like if someone wants to make a motion, we're headed towards a motion of denial, and they can use our testimony to consider ways to revise the design. I don't know if I'm just complicating things, but I don't know, Anne and others, you kind of have convinced me that maybe that parapet detail, although atypical of the district, is a modern interpretation. So I guess I'm less concerned with the stucco myself, just throwing that out there, since earlier I said I was concerned with it. But I do have the same concerns with the ADU, just being such a large scale and very little articulation, and where the change in materials are at the back of the duplex seems to be disproportionate, as other commissioners have mentioned. So just wanted to throw out, in case the applicant's like, oh, half of the people, I'll throw in my 2 cents and go back on what I said with the parapet earlier, because I do understand that perspective, that it's a modern interpretation. So if no one else is flip-flopping like me and wants to add anything, then would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move.
Thanks,
Okay.
George.
Madam Chair, I move to deny application 2022-COA-100 for design detail of the proposed infill at 431 Acoma as per design guidelines 4.3, 4.6, 4.16, and 4.19, character defining features for the Baker Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thanks, George. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second that.
Thank you, Julie. All right, let's vote. George.
Aye.
Brad.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Erica. Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So the project is denied, but thank you. There has been progress, and we look forward to see the next iteration. All right, the next project on design review today is 2022-COA-108 at 2626 West 37th Avenue. Take it away, Brittany.
So our next project is for design details of a tandem house. So in continuing our theme of design details for today, we'll be looking at the materials for a tandem house. So this proposed tandem house is in the Potter Highlands Historic District, and it will be located behind 2626 West 37th Avenue, which is a 1.5 story bungalow structure that fronts onto a east-west street. So the primary street frontage is a kind of a interior block. It's a very long lot, as you can see in this aerial image here. So between the tandem house and the existing primary structure will be a fence. So I'm just going to highlight that fence so we can all see where that fence is placed. Potentially not, it's not letting me do that. Anyways, the tandem house will have a walkway off of West 37th, but there will be a new fence that separates the tandem house and the existing historic structure. You can see that in the site plan here, and if you need to see it a little bit better, it is in your packet. The fence is shown as a vertical fence on the site plan, but in some of the renderings and materials, the fence is noted as a horizontal fence. So staff are asking for clarification on that. We typically don't allow horizontal fencing in the front yard, but this is all located in the rear yard, so we would allow a horizontal or vertical application for that fence. So here is the front elevation and the rear elevation of the proposed tandem house. This is a very simple design. The tandem house will be clad in lap siding with a 4-inch reveal. It is a fiber cement with a smooth finish. I'm not entirely sure on the color of the proposed tandem house, but as this is paint color, it's not something that the commission particularly has purview over, as it could be painted anytime. In either case, it's going to be a white, so it's either going to be a white dove or a Bennington gray. The application materials note both, depending on what keynotes you're looking at. But again, that's a paint color that the commission does not have purview over. The proposed front door for this structure is wood. It is a quarter light wood, and we'll have a panel below, as you can see here in this image. All of the windows for this structure are aluminum clad windows. They are either double hung or casement operations. As you can see, many of the windows have divided lights in the upper sash. They are simulated divided lights. The application materials don't indicate whether those windows will have that spacer bar that creates that traditional shadow line of a true divided light. So we are requiring that they be simulated divided lights with a spacer bar. Some window companies call that a grill between the glass. So we would also just need details on that, depending on what this particular window manufacturer calls that detail. The front porch will have wood porch posts with a 3-foot high steel railing. Staff do have some concerns over the steel railing and the change in material and the horizontal orientation of the railing. This is not a typical detail that you normally see within the Potter Highlands Historic District with the horizontal orientation. So staff are recommending, if the railing is not needed due to the height of this porch, it just be eliminated from the project proposal. However, if it's needed for fall protection, that it be a vertically oriented railing instead of a horizontal oriented railing. One change to the design, and this is a very minor change, is that on the rear elevation, there has been a roof covering added to the man door, which you can see here. It's just a simple canopy kind of covering there. So here is the east and west elevations. This is a side facing gable structure, and it will have stucco in the gable face with a timber frame detail. Staff are asking for a detail section of that gable face to confirm that it is a genuine 3-coat stucco, and just to kind of confirm the relationship of the stucco to the timber framing detail. to ensure that that is constructed per the landmark approval. There have been no changes to the west elevation, and here you can see the casement operation windows, which are just egress windows, but the rest of the windows on the facade are either fixed or double hung windows. However, on the east elevation, there has been some minimal changes to the window proportions. So in the initial mass form and context submittal, there were not 2 windows proposed at the rear of the structure. So the 2 windows that you see on the left side of your screen on the east elevation towards the rear are new window openings. Those are the same proportions as the windows proposed towards the front. So we feel that this is an acceptable change. And then finally, the window and the stair landing on this east elevation has been altered. So initially it was the same proportion as the windows on the ground floor. Now it's just a smaller accent window, and it appears to be matching the proportions of the windows on the primary structure, in which you have some smaller accent windows. So staff do not have concerns over that window as it is in a stair landing and does appear to relate to the primary structure. So this house will have overhanging eaves, and the material on the underside of that eave is a board and batten wood material, which is an appropriate material. Here you can see a detail of that steel railing that is proposed, and then just some of the wall section details that are required for construction. Here are some additional construction details. This is the window detail. So staff is recommending that the windows be inset at least 2 inches into the wall plane for the structure, as that is typically something that we do require for all of our buildings within the landmark historic districts, just to give that appearance of shadow lines that we typically see in historic structures. When we're talking about wood frame structures, that 2-inch inset can be from the upper pane of glazing, so it doesn't have to be as deeply recessed as say something we'd see on a masonry structure. But just the construction details here. So generally speaking, staff do feel that this project proposal does meet the design guidelines, but we are requesting some additional information. So in addition to the tandem house, a new garage will be constructed as the existing 1-story garage will be demolished. The garage construction will match that of the tandem house, so it will also be clad in fiber cement siding with a 4-inch reveal, and then have an asphalt shingle roof. It is a 2-bay garage. So the single bay is for the existing primary structure, and then the new 2-car garage bay is for the new tandem house. It will have windows on the north elevation that front towards the tandem house, and the door on the garage will be a fiberglass half-light door, which you can see in this image here. So in terms of the project proposal, staff feel that the materials are appropriate and do meet our design guidelines for Denver landmark structures and districts. Additionally, this proposed tandem house will have minimal visibility from the public right away. So that's why we were also comfortable with the structure being entirely clad in lap siding, although lap siding is not a material you typically see historically for the entirety of a cladding material. Because it is behind an existing historic structure, and the profile with that 4-inch reveal relates to the profiles you see in brick, and some of the other details on the structure, such as the stucco and the gable faces, do relate to the craftsman structures within the district. We do feel that this tandem house is appropriate in terms of the design details. So just here's a rendering of the tandem house, and this rendering hasn't been updated since the phase 1 mass form and context submittal. So again, on that east elevation, you're not seeing those 2 additional windows that were added. And this is where it's showing that horizontal fencing. So we just again need to confirm what orientation the fence will have, as that is something that we will look at in the design. Details in and at inspection. So we are recommending approval of this project with conditions, and those conditions be that the windows have a simulated divided light with a spacer bar, or be a true divided light. Windows be inset at least 2 inches into the wall plane. Provide an east-west gable face section detail to confirm stucco siding is a 3-coat stucco with wood trim. Confirm the fence orientation and fence height and plan. And then finally, this project will need a bulk plane encroachment for the eaves that are minimally within the bulk plane. This should be clearly stated in the application materials. So the elevations do show the bulk plane encroachment, but the measurement isn't clearly stated. And we do have to include that measurement in our letter of recommendation. We write to the zoning administrator. So here you can see the bulk plane encroachment. Staff do feel that this encroachment into the bulk plane for this particular tandem house is appropriate. So the Denver zoning code does allow for tandem houses in this district to be 2.5 stories, and the applicant did initially propose a 2.5 story tandem house. However, we had concerns that it was not compatible with the existing primary structure. So the applicant did redesign the tandem house to be what you see before you today. But with that redesign, the tandem house got a little bit wider, which pushed those edges of the roof into the bulk plane. So we do feel that the encroachment into the bulk plane is appropriate, and we are also recommending that the commission recommend the approval of the bulk plane encroachment and just clearly state that encroachment, what that measurement is in the application materials.
Great. Thank you, Brittany. Do we have any questions for staff? Yeah, Gary. You're on mute.
I have a question about the staff's comment for guideline 4.16. It says, and it says staff would recommend elimination of the balustrade from the project. I'm assuming you're talking about the railing at the porch. But it says if a balustrade is required for fall protection or preferred by the applicant, staff would recommend a horizontally oriented design. I suspect you're actually recommending a vertically oriented design.
That would be correct. My apologies.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure that that correction occurs so that when when and if this is approved as recommended, that the applicant isn't confused about what we're asking for. Okay, thank you.
And I also, now that you mentioned that, do see that I didn't include that in my conditions either, so that if that's something that the commission felt was the appropriate recommendation, we need to add a condition for that as well. My apologies.
All right, any other questions? Okay, is the applicant present? I believe they've been promoted already. So you can go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready. Please start with your name and address for the record. You have up to 10 minutes.
This is Dean Ritchie, address is 1001 Bannock Street. I'm not really sure how much more to add. I mean, I think in the detailing phase, we've tried to keep things pretty simple with the fascia, soffit, front porch. We understand the conditions, recommendations of staff, and don't disagree with any of it. We were planning on a 3-coat stucco. The porch rail is not required for fall protection, so we can eliminate it. Our only intent with that was to give it a bit more of a contemporary feel, where we're concerned that someone might comment that it was too replicative if we didn't bring in a couple modern elements. That's why the horizontal rail is more contemporary. And And we thought that would work, but we have, again, not required it and don't object to removing it. I think the key with a bulk plane violation is we're trying to match the ridge orientation of the existing house in front of it. That's what sort of drives it. I think the bulk plane is really set for ridges to be perpendicular to the street, not so much parallel to the street. So that's really the only reason for that. And we think it works pretty well with the front house. With regard to the fences, I'll just touch on that just so you guys understand what we are proposing, because it wasn't clear. A 4-foot fence in front of the new house, between the existing house and new house, and then a 6-foot fence in what is truly the backyard. We don't want a 6-foot fence between even what you can see from the street, between the rear house and the street. So 4-foot fence there, and we can clarify the orientation with staff. So sorry for the confusion there. But that's really what we've got.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? All right, thanks for your time. Are there any comments for this project? Please use the hand raise button at this time.
Not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, then let's go ahead and move into deliberation. All right, so what did everybody think about the design details and their applicability with the guidelines? I'll go ahead and get started then. I think that with this, the details look really consistent with our guidelines, and I think it's going to be a great added value here to the neighborhood. So I'm very supportive of the application. I do agree with most of the staff comments. Most of these are pretty standard that we see, with the 2-inch recess of windows into the wall plane, having spacer bars with the divided lights and 3-coat stucco systems. So I think all of those make sense. And it sounds like the applicant can update their application to show the fence information necessary. I think that all makes sense to me based on the applicant's testimony. And same with the bulk plane encroachment. I didn't have a problem with the porch railing personally. I actually agree with the applicant that, this otherwise does look like a fairly traditional building. So I think having that kind of modern railing doesn't bother me. And, it kind of picks up on the horizontal siding, the horizontal lines in the railing. So it seems to fit with the design of the structure.
Kelly, I agree. I think the horizontal railing actually fits well with design guideline 4.5. So I didn't really have an issue with it either. But otherwise, or including that, I think this project clearly meets all of the design guidelines that the staff went through in great detail in their report. So I'm supportive of this with the conditions originally stated.
Thanks, Erica. Is everyone kind of feeling the same way with that? I know it was a very detailed staff presentation. So well done, Brittany. You make our job easier. Okay.
That's what makes it so easy.
Yep. All right. Well, great. If everyone's in agreement, then who's going to make the motion?
I can make the motion.
Thank you, Erica. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes. Sorry. I move to recommend it. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. Let me start again. I move to recommend an administrative adjustment for bulk plane for section 12, of bulk plane adjustment per section 12.4.5.3 of the Denver zoning code, and to conditionally approve application number 2022-COA-108 for the Phase 2 design details at 2626 West 37th Avenue, as per design guidelines 4.2 through 4.6, 4.8, 4.16, 4.19, 5.9, 5.16, 5.21, character defining features for the Potter Highlands Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. 1, that the windows should be a simulated divided light with spacer bar or a true divided light. 2, windows should be inset at least 2 inches into the wall plane. 3, that the drawings provide an east and west gable face section detail and confirms stucco siding is a 3-coat stucco with wood trim. 4, confirm the fence orientation and fence height in plan. And 5, clearly state the bulk plane encroachment measurement.
Thanks, Erica, and thank you, Gary, for seconding. I will call for the vote. George.
Aye.
Brad.
Aye.
Julie.
Aye.
Gary. You're on mute.
Aye.
Thank you. Erica.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Kelly. Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. Okay, so we have one more project on design review, but I know the meeting's been going on a while. Do we need a little restroom break? Yeah. Okay, I hear one vote for a yes. So we'll take a very short break for restroom break and be right back. Let's start the meeting again. Great. All right. So the next project on our design review agenda is 2022-COA-109 at 2434 through 36 West 36th.
Okay, so next up we have an application for mass form and context for Infill for a duplex with a rear detached garage. So here is the current site. So currently there is a non-contributing building built circa 1955 located on the lot. So as you know, this will need to go through demolition approval before the project is finalized for approval. Normally we would put the demolition application on this same meeting. The demolition application was originally scheduled for this meeting, but was pulled from the agenda when I realized that the owner information on the application was incorrect. So just to let you know that this will be coming to you for demolition approval on a future meeting. So you can kind of see here the setting. The lot is located mid-block between Zuni and Alcott, with alleys located to either side of the property. So here you see the streetscape. So the applicant is proposing a 2-story infill design. Will be a duplex that uses the kind of inspiration from the terrace type building that you find within the district, the kind of boxy, flat roofed form, multifamily. Find it within the district, both in a 2-story form and in a 1-story form. You can see the adjacent existing property on the block is a 1-story kind of terrace form. I apologize for my dog. Somebody must be delivering something. Okay. And here you have the site plans. You can see there the duplex and then the rear garage. It'll be located on the alley. So the new construction is aligned with the adjacent properties on 36. So here you have the facade of the building. So as I said, it takes inspiration from the terrace type building. So typical features of the historic terrace type include brick construction, flat roofs, boxy rectangular plans, simple forms, hipped roof porches, sometimes either individual, like you see here with 2 porches, or sometimes a combined porch, multiple front doors which face the street. Porches often have simple Doric columns. You get simple corbelled brick cornice, sash windows with simple headers and sills, and simple brick detailing such as string horses. So staff finds this proposal to be a simplified version of the historic terrace type form. So here you see the side elevations. So overall, fairly regular rhythm to the fenestration. You can see, certainly, somewhat irregular, but that is typical for side elevations that generally don't have the same symmetry that you would find on the front elevation. So some of the blank spaces, staff finds are, compatible with the side elevation of the building. They're proposing a hipped roof garage at the rear. So while typically we find with a flat roof building, flat roof garages are more typical. So we certainly think a flat roof garage could be compatible here if they want to use a hipped roof garage. Those are also found in the district, but staff does find that the hipped roof should have overhanging eaves. So you can see here it's shown with close eaves this perspective, and generally we would require that buildings have at least a 6-inch eave overhang where it's a form that you would typically find an overhang. The garage does feature an overhang on this perspective, but so we do think some tweaking there in the roof form and the eave overhang are potentially also changing to a flat roof. Here you see the rear. So obviously a lot more glass and open with the large openings on the first floor there at the rear, but obviously that's towards the rear. So staff finds this compatible since this won't have any street visibility. So overall, staff find that the proposed infill fits typical building forms and massing found on other terrace types in the district, and that it's compatible overall with district patterns. But we do believe there's a few small areas that some additional study of the characteristics of other terraces could help a little bit in the refinement of the design. So you'll see here there were some examples of terraces included. You see there at the rear, though there's also quite a few that were either new construction or one commercial building. So I also included a few additional examples beyond what was included in the application, since many of those were newer. There's also other examples, several other, many other examples within the district that you could look at as well. So one issue that we believe a little bit of tweaking could be used in the fenestration. So currently the duplex features 2 paired windows and 2 doors on the first floor, with 2 paired windows and 2 small square windows on the second floor. While single windows are more common than paired on terraces, paired windows are found on historic examples, but staff has some concern with the square windows. So kind of smaller, often sometimes square shaped windows are found on terrace examples, but they're generally spaced closer together. Staff finds that the really wide spacing that you see on the infill example kind of emphasizes the width, kind of makes the building seem wider, and that having those windows closer together would be more representative of the patterns that you typically find, or some other, doing some other detailing there, rather, maybe even leaving those, but doing brick detail, something so that you don't have this big blank space in the middle of the facade. So either moving the windows closer together, doing some other treatment there, leave that open, but just that we find that the really widely spaced square windows are not representative. We also believe that some tweaking could be done to the hipped roof porches. So paired hipped roof porches are typical, but these porches are really long and shallow. They're nearly 19 feet long and 10 foot deep. So having porches that are so long across sort of the facade but very shallow is not really typical. The porches at the adjacent single-story terrace are fairly shallow, but they're not nearly as wide. So we feel that also kind of having the really long, shallow porches also emphasizes the width and kind of increases the, making the building look wider. So staff would recommend approval with the following conditions: that the restudy the facade fenestration, restudy the porch proportions, and at the garage, either use a flat roof or a hipped roof with a consistent eave overhang of at least 6 inches. Honey has also reviewed the design. The comments included in your packet were from a review of a previous version of the design that Honey reviewed back in July 2021. But Honey's also submitted a letter on this current design, which was forwarded to you via email this week. So Honey expressed the following concerns with the current design. Honey felt that the porches were too wide and too shallow and didn't meet district patterns. They felt the porch posts should be thicker. They shared staff concerns with the fenestration on the facade, and they believe that a flat roof garage would be more consistent with the district. The applicant did submit some revised plans to staff, but those were, after the application was already sent out to the commission. So they have offered to revise the front porch width to 16 feet wide and 8 feet deep, to make the front porch columns thicker, and to change the garages to a flat roof. They have not proposed any changes to the fenestration on the facade. That's it for me.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Nope. Yeah,
sorry,
Erica.
Bobby, could you quickly just go over the porch dimensions as we see them in the application that came to us and the revised that you just mentioned? I just want to.
Yeah, sure. So as you see them now in the current application package, the porches are 18 feet 10 inches wide and 4 feet deep. In a revised version that the applicant sent me, they are proposing to revise them to 16 feet wide and 8 feet deep.
Any other questions for staff? Nope. All right. I see we've got the applicant here, so you can unmute yourself when you're ready. Please start with your name and address for the record, and you have up to 10 minutes.
Hello, my name is Don Gorig. I'm in Denver, Colorado with Gorig Design. Really, I think Abigail has pretty much summed it all up. There's really not much I can add to it. It's a pretty simple design. We have, of course, agreed with the staff recommendations on changing the front porch and the garage, as well as the front posts. Quite honestly, there's not much to add to it. So at this point, what you see is pretty much what you're going to get. We will discuss more of the other revisions, such as the windows and some facade fenestrations in the future. But at this point, there's nothing much else I can add.
All right, thank you. And I do have a question for you about, you mentioned the windows, that you'll look at that at a future time. Has there been any conversation? Essentially, I'm just wondering, so are you open to modifying the windows, or do you have a very strong stance that the current proposed fenestration is the best approach?
Well, I don't have a strong stance, but I mean, my interpretation of the square windows from what we see is what I show. I guess what I would probably want to ask you guys and anyone else, and Abigail as well, what is the definition of a square window to you? Because what I see are square panes on each of the windows on the front. The sides, of course, they're a little different because of the proportions of the rooms. But as you can also see in the example photos, those windows are not square in any of them. And so at this point, I mean, it is just a recommendation I'm certainly willing to modify it if needed, but I don't see what needs to be modified. So a little help on that would need to be
Gotcha.
provided.
Okay, we can discuss that in our testimony then, or deliberation.
Sure.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Nope. All right, thank you for your time. Are there any comments on this project? Please use the hand raise button at this time.
Hands raised.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead and move into deliberation then.
Kelly, just a quick recap. Just the staff concern was with the spacing of the windows, not with this shape so much, that there are a variety of kind of shapes of smaller windows found. It was the spacing of the windows that was the staff comment, just to clarify that.
Thanks, Abby. Yeah, so and you've got the perfect slide up here to discuss that. And I think you had mentioned that you thought the spacing was very far apart in comparison to the examples in the neighborhood. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Let's move into deliberation. So I'm trying to think if maybe we should break this down to the different components and talk about each of the components. That might be the easiest way to go about it. So let's start with the windows. What did everybody think about the proportions of the windows proposed?
Madam Chair, I agree with staff's determination on that.
Okay.
I do too, and I heard Abby say mostly concern about the spacing in that blank space in between, so that there's different ways to address that, whether it's moving the window slightly or some other sort of treatment there. And I just want to highlight that I think that's appropriate, that it's doesn't have to be one or the other.
Okay. Did anybody disagree with that comment and feel that the proportions proposed are acceptable to the guidelines? No, so everyone agrees with the staff. Yeah, Anne.
I have sort of the same outlook as I did in the last project, which is it's just hard to tell when you're replicating, when you're sort of honoring something that is seen throughout the neighborhood and when you're doing a contemporary interpretation of something. And I could see somebody saying this is a contemporary interpretation, because who's to say, a little bit the problem I have is, so if you move them both in 6 inches, does that make it match? Or do you move it in 1 foot? Does that make it match? And again, I think this is what the applicant, it's centered over the front door, which I think you could see that there's a composition here. And so while I understand what the staff is doing, I sort of feel like I'm not sure, and I guess I want to hear from other commissioners, I'm not sure that it's for the commission to decide whether it needs to move in 6 inches on both sides, or whether this is just what the applicant intended in their interpretation, their modern interpretation of what this structure looks like.
And I completely agree with you. I thought that the alignment above the doors is more important than them being close together. There is obviously more space between these windows than you typically see in the historic forms, but they're drawing from the historic context in the size of the fenestration, which meets, now I gotta look at the guideline because I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but the guideline pertaining to Windows 4.8, designing windows, doors, and features to be compatible. I think that they have done that by using typical proportions, window proportions, and they've so I agree with you, I guess is what I'm saying. I think it's a modern interpretation and I don't have any problem with the fenestration.
I also have to echo that as far as the illustration prior to that, is that the isometric view gives it the impression that the windows are further apart than they are. And when you see this north elevation, the windows are directly over the one more back, I think. The windows are, yeah, the windows are directly over the front doors. And in some of the other illustrations of other homes, yes, the windows are closer together, but they too are over the front doors. The front doors happen to be very, very close. So I think it's this is a modern interpretation, and I'm not uncomfortable with that at all. It's if the prescription is space between the windows, or is the prescription harmony between the verticals of the doors and the porches and the windows, and I would go with the doors and the porches and the windows. I also agree with a 4-foot porch is pretty useless. So it's changing the porch proportions is a good idea too.
So could we look at a slide that has some of the other historic examples of terraces? I would just like to say that, I think for me, I think the issue with the spacing, it actually goes to something about the porches that I had some concern with as well, that when you see these terraces, there's something in the center that kind of unifies the two units together. And so when we have, say, on the right-hand side of the historic example, on the upper right, we have these shared lintels and sills of the smaller windows at the second level. And we have a shared porch. I'm not, suggesting that it has to be a shared porch, but something about these porches as well, in that they're not oriented around the doors so much. The doors are actually right at the edge of the porch, as far as I can see from the drawings. So I think that's my concern about the spacing, is that the pattern or the rhythm of the fenestration and the porch together kind of is atypical from what we see of terraces, where there's some sort of unifying element in the center. Some of them don't have that. They have like a center window. But again, it's, I'm not seeing it on this one, but it creates a centered element that we're not seeing on this. And I think that's what is concerning me. It's not a matter of space dimensions so much as the pattern of openings that we see.
I can see what you're saying, Erica. I mean, I think if you look at like 3337 Alcott, there is kind of a space between, and that one's a little different because the doors are kind of on the ends of the units rather than towards the middle, but they do have the two separate porches, and there's kind of a larger space between the windows of each unit in that one. And so I see what you're saying, and I wouldn't be opposed to them doing something like that. I'm just not personally seeing the need to require it to meet the guidelines, because I think that they've met enough other things with, the proportions of the fenestration and alignments that they've chosen to do, that I think that makes it compatible, that I don't feel the need to prescribe the dimensions between or an element between. But this is also the phase 1 mass, form, and context. So I think if they wanted to provide some sort of detail between those windows in phase 2, they could. I mean, I know we're already thinking like this is brick and has a brick parapet kind of detail because they've shown that to us, but we're not reviewing materiality and details at this time. So that's my 2 cents. So I'd like to hear other people weigh in, because I guess I'm hearing a few of us, it sounds like, are kind of comfortable with the fenestration as shown. There might be a couple that aren't, who think it needs restudy per the staff comments.
Madam Chair, this is Julie. Actually, Anne kind of changed my mind a little bit here about the spacing of the fenestration. I think she's right, and I that's all I'm going to say.
Thanks.
Yeah, Kelly, this is Brad. I don't have, I think the window proportioning is fine. I do think that from a mass and scale perspective, this kind of, it gets there, right? So I think the mass of the building, the scale, the proportions are really there. I think that your comment about in the next phase, there might be an opportunity there to, for Erica's comment about a unifying element. If you look at all of these, there's a little detail or something that comes and helps, you know, if nothing else, kind of take the scale or the mass a little bit and just kind of has a distinction between one unit and the other. And that may be something, I don't think that has to happen, but that may be something that gets studied at that point in time. But I think overall the mass and scale seems appropriate.
Thanks, Brad.
For what we're proving now.
So I think that's a good segue to kind of, we've covered the fenestration. The applicant said that regarding the porch, you know, they're already looking at modifications. So does everyone agree that if the porch proportions kind of change in the direction that the applicant's looking at, that would be more, make this more compatible? I see some nodding heads. Yep. Yes. Okay. So anything else to discuss on the porch? Are we good to move forward? Okay, I'm trying to hit all these points, make sure we don't miss anything. So we talked about fenestration, porch, the garage using either a flat or hipped roof, and it sounds like the applicant was open to making that change. Does everyone agree that that would make the garage more compatible? Okay. Mm-hmm. Then was there anything else any commissioners had to say about this proposed infill?
Nope.
All right. I think there's enough testimony then to get the applicant thinking on how to make changes for their design details round. So the way I'm hearing it, I think the approval with conditions is the way that we're moving towards as the staff report states, but maybe that first condition, depending on who states the motion, maybe that first condition is not required. I also wonder, it makes me nervous when we have conditions that say to restudy, because that's so broad. Now I know this one is coming back for a second review for design details, but I wonder if maybe we can be more specific in that condition and state that the porches the porch should be deeper or something. Adam, did you have a comment on that?
Yes, I was going to follow up exactly on that. A condition that says something needs to be restudied really isn't a condition. Applications that clearly meet the design guidelines could be administratively approved by staff. Obviously, this one did not, and that's why it came to you all. And so now you would be making an approval on mass, form, and scale. And so your conditions do need to be objective and concrete so that those conditions can be met. A restudy is just too subjective and nebulous. So I would agree that if you all do feel that the porch proportions do not meet the guidelines for mass, form, and scale, something needs to be addressed. If you all feel that they do meet it for mass, form, and scale, and really this is something design-wise, then you could probably ignore that. But that would mean that their general location right now is meeting guidelines, if you felt that that was not a condition. And let me know if you have any questions. I felt like I was getting a bit inarticulate there at the end.
Well, so Adam, would it be fair to say that if we were to rephrase that condition to state that the porches should be deeper or something to that effect, or Erica, if you had a more eloquent way of saying it, or Gary, I see some hands going up.
I
Do we say that it look at other precedents of porches within the district? So, I mean, if we're talking about being prescriptive, I don't, I guess I'm just wondering if that also is being too prescriptive, but if we're wanting to meet the design guidelines of the surrounding context.
That's a good point. So to have the porches better match the proportions of the historic context.
And what I'm going to say, I think the objection by the R&O about the drawing showing the porches, showing separate porches only 2 feet apart is the problem. That the porches, whether it's a combined porch, which I think would be acceptable, or separate porches that are separated by more than a few feet, I think is what would be more acceptable and more consistent with the guidelines. That if you look at the precedents, there are either combined porches or smaller porches that are separated and more distinct from one another. So I think that's the issue. And yeah, yes, and they could be deeper. The shallow porch, I think,
yeah,
is also a problem.
Thank you. You hit on that much clearer and better than I did. But that kind of goes back to Adam's point that that's not a very clear, if there are multiple ways that they can meet it, that's not a concrete condition.
Well, it is, if we give the 2 choices, then it's up to staff to decide. I think it's enough information to know what, to let the staff know what would be acceptable from the commission's point of view. Don't you think?
And I'll just say, since this is mass form and context, it's coming back to you regardless. I mean, all design details. So it's not a question of whether or not staff is clear enough that we could approve it administratively on our own. Either way, whatever is decided, it'll come back to you for review.
Yeah.
It will come back to you, but for design details. If we're here for mass, form, scale, that's something that does need to be set in stone, for lack of a better word, on what you all feel is meeting the design guidelines. If you feel that the porch is unclear enough, then one option you can have is to continue this so that a proposal can be brought that you all can review and determine whether it meets guidelines or not.
So I don't think this is an issue of us not having enough information to make a judgment personally, but I do understand, like Erica and Gary, you've kind of said it very well, that there are a couple ways you can address it, but they're very clear ways. I think if our testimony has stated that, and maybe we make the condition, rephrase it, kind of Erica, like you had proposed, then the applicant has clear direction that they could do either this or this. And then it's going to come back to us, as Abby said. Would everyone be comfortable with that? Because I think we've done things before where we're like, oh yes, we approve this, but our testimony has stated, yeah, if they were to change this other thing, we'd be okay with that. That's not the first time that's happened.
Kelly, can I just, I certainly think either giving 2 options would be fine. I also just want to remind you and say that the applicant has proposed to do 16 feet wide and 8 feet deep already. So they're leaning the way of, of keeping them separate, but changing those dimensions. So you could also decide whether or not you think, since that's the way they're leaning, you could, comment on whether or not you think that that would be appropriate and make that condition.
Okay. So does everyone feel that that would make it more appropriate? I think, Gary, this might get back to what you were saying is maybe that's appropriate, but we need to see where they're located.
Right. So rather than specify dimensions, I think specify the intent of what two options would make the porch positions and proportions more acceptable. So Madam Chair, I move to approve with conditions application number 2022-COA-109 for the mass form and context of the new duplex and garage at 2434 and 2436 West 36th Avenue as per design guidelines 4.1 through 4.5, 4.7, 4.8, 4.15, 4.16, 4.18, and 4.19. Character defining features for the Potter Highlands Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the conditions that the porch proportions more compatibly reflect similar porches in the district by either proposing a single porch or separate porches that are more proportional in separation and size. And at the garage, either use a flat roof or a hipped roof with a consistent eave overhang of at least 6 inches.
Thank you, Gary. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I will
I'll second.
Whoop, Julie, I think you beat him to it. Thank you, Julie. All right. I will call for the vote. George?
Aye.
Brad?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Erica? I didn't hear you there.
Aye.
Thank you. Anne?
Aye.
And Kelly? Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. Good job wordsmithing that, Gary. All right, so the project is conditionally approved. So that's the end of our agenda, but I did want to mention that today is Brad's last day on the commission. So Brad, we're really gonna miss you.
I'm gonna miss you guys too.
No, we're really gonna miss you.
What are you gonna do with all your free time? Just
I
kidding.
got people walking by waiting to talk to me right now.
Yeah, exactly. The phones
Well, I know that staff is working on organizing a little farewell get together, so we should all check our inboxes for that forthcoming. And Jen, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but we're still working on finding a commissioner to fill your seat. They have very big shoes to fill, but
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. And I really enjoyed my time. So I just want to thank everybody. It was nice to get to know all of you as well and kind of learn. I've actually learned a lot from staff, from everybody on the commission, different points of view. So that's really kind of what it's all about. So there's lots of good information that I will take away from this, and hopefully I'll see you on the other side here on some projects coming up.
Sounds great.
Yeah, we can't wait for that, Brad.
There's some
Just
out
make
there,
sure you
so it'll be
restudy
good.
it. Yeah.
I will. I hear that all the time here. We're always talking about restudy.
I tell Brad all the time when we were doing Welton Street
I
project.
know. what you got to do. That's how you do it.
Well, thank you, Brad, for all
Well,
that you've
thanks.
done to serve on the commission. You've been a really great addition to the commission, and we're sad to see you go, but thank you for everything you've done. And we're excited to celebrate
thanks,
you
everybody.
as well.
Yeah, that'll be great. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a long time since we've all been together.
Seriously, this is a good excuse.
Yeah, exactly.
Although I'd rather you just not leave, but
So speaking of everyone being together, I remember we were talking about trying to get the commission back in person at some point soon last summer, and then that got postponed and postponed and postponed, and then our friend Omicron visited, and so we're back to that conversation now. So I suspect that sometime in May we will probably have you guys come back in person. And we're still trying to figure out the details and logistics and all that stuff. We've been testing the technology, but just want to give you guys that heads up that so you're not surprised by that. The other thing is that I realized, the fun things you remember when you brush your teeth or whatever it is. This morning I was like, oh my God, the commission has to have an election. Your election has to be the first meeting in April. So that will be on the agenda, but you guys think amongst yourselves and talk amongst yourselves about that, and trying to think if there's anything else to share. I think that's it.
good call. Yeah. So if anybody else wants to throw their ring in the hat.
Let me just say, talking among yourselves, make sure you do it at a meeting with a quorum. Or
yes. Think amongst yourselves.
As you've all seen in Douglas County, we don't want to be running afoul of the open meetings law.
Yeah.
Okay.
The little Adam on my shoulder saw that on the news and was like, Adam would say that that's not legal. Anyway, thank you for training us so well, Adam.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks everybody. I'll call it end the meeting. I was about to say call to order. That's the wrong term.
4:04 p.m. for Emily's benefit.
Thanks everybody.